It's really like to bring these different facets and angles to climate change in order to destabilize the already prevailing notions of climate change that we've adopted, right? कि बस like plastic की थैली नहीं use करनी, उससे कुछ नहीं होगा. I mean, don't use plastic thellies, but you really have to critically engage with the idea of the climate as it is, but also how it's changing and how do we need to change. Should we adapt or should we change actively?
Students of the Institute of Business Administration hosted a 2-day conference on climate change. The multiple panels hosted on the 7th and 8th of October examined how ecology and modern human society can exist in a changing environment.
We had initially sort of thought about creating a lineup of panels and a lineup of speakers and different activities around the theme of climate change to happen mostly because climate change is looked at in a very unidimensional way. Garmi बढ़ रही है, sure. हमें straws नहीं use करनी चाहिए, sure. But is that it? Because we often forget that it's a much larger issue that has seeped into our knowledge systems. It's not just the things we do, it's why we do them and how unconsciously do we do them.
The seminar departed from the traditional understanding of climate change, instead examining the intersections which have led to the issue.
What we have not thought about is what this knowledge system is built on, right? By way of erasure of what other knowledge systems, which is of course the indigenous native communities that were erased quite flagrantly in the colonial era. You have to not isolate the discourse around climate change as it being simply, not in such a positivist way, like, bas like, garmi बढ़ रही है, blah, blah, right? Like you have to really critically engage with the power structures that give way to certain actions being enacted by us on the daily that we take for granted. Like throwing trash, not planting trees, or living in a concrete environment.
Panellists Shahana Rajani and Sabah Khan expose the traumatizing effect infrastructural development has on native communities. As documented in Rajani's project, the Gadab sessions recorded the violent erasure of Gadab town, now known as Bheria town, Karachi.
What really stood out to me, you asked, was that in the second one, we also then talked about the forms of relation that we have with the land, or the certain form of indigeneity in the way the people from Gadab explained it, the people from Murray explained it, that there was this emphasis on care, because we all know that Qudrat gives us this care, and we should be able to reciprocate it. But then these processes of modernity, in that sense, sort of come in and not only displace those people, but also then displace the land entirely and turn it into a sort of a commodity that can be used for economy and whatnot.
Both artists examined the consequences of infrastructure development to indigenous populations and the environment, as shown in Khan's study of dams and barrages across Pakistan.
So it was to move water for agriculture, to send it out to areas where there's farming going on. So household use or use of the local community wasn't as such important for them. And the idea was also that this water is going to rush down and rush through the delta and go into the sea and get wasted. But they don't realize that fresh water is also giving life to the dolphins, to the crabs and like shrimps. So that delta needs fresh water to grow as well. But now you see the delta has receded, the sea is coming into the land. We wouldn't have this amount of electricity if we didn't have the dams. So it's like a double-edged sword. But then now we also have too much electricity. So it's the supply is actually crossing the demand. But it's become so expensive because these dams were so expensive to produce that buying that electricity is not viable for our citizens because we don't have those kind of incomes. So yes and no. I mean, it's made the agricultural area much larger from what it was, but at the same time, it's also deprived a lot of people.
The conference featured artists, activists, wildlife experts, business owners, filmmakers, and even a breathwork circle.
So just trying to not only think of it ourselves, but also to generate some sense of curiosity. Like it is most definitely about the generation of the knowledge, but no one can provide you enough knowledge about everything in today's. It's also about generating curiosity in that sense, and just sort of, to force us to And force is a harsh word, but at least through curiosity, make us think of care work, make us think of reparations, and make us think of a reimagination of these sort of the future that we're going towards, which looks very, very dark.